Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the San Benito CISD Board of Trustees to order. Today is June 8th, 2021, and it is exactly 5:31. Roll call. Ms. Janie Lopez.
Present.
Mr. Oscar Medrano. Here. Mr. Rudy Corona.
Present.
Dr. Ariel Cruz.
Here.
Mr. Orlando Lopez.
Present.
Mr. Mario Silva.
Present.
Dr. Nate Carmen.
Present.
Mr. Stephen Weller. And myself, Ramiro Moreno, present. All right, agenda item 1.2, Pledge of Allegiance to the United States and the Texas flags. Mr. Medrano.
Leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance is Isaiah James de la Cruz from Ed Downs Fine Arts Academy. Isaiah James is the son of Jules and J.C. Roa and Carlos and Lauren de la Cruz and is currently a fourth grade student at Ed Downs Fine Arts Academy. He is 10 years old and his favorite subject is math. His hobbies include playing sports such as Taifa football, basketball, and baseball. Isaiah has also competed with the Ed Downs chess team since he was in kindergarten and has received multiple awards for placing at regionals each year. This year, Isaiah placed third at the district spelling bee. Isaiah aspires to become an animator in the near future. Please stand up.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one state, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Leading us in the invocation is Cecilia Alvarado. Cecilia Jimena Alvarado is the daughter of Jaime Maria Alvarado and is currently a fourth grade student at Ed Downs Fine Arts Academy. She is 9 years old and her favorite subject is science. She enjoys dancing with Ed Downs cheer team and performing with the Ed Downs Orchestra, as well as with the choir. She plays the violin and participates in the video production. Cecilia enjoys drawing, painting, singing, and dancing. She also spends a lot of time running around the yard with her big brother and 2 puppies. Cecilia aspires to become an elementary school teacher or veterinarian in the near future.
Good evening, everyone. Please join me and bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you today for the opportunity and the blessing of allowing us to gather under one roof once again. We also want to thank you for the blessing of closing out yet another successful academic school year. We humbly ask you today to bless our school board members, students, administration, faculty and staff, and finally our wonderful San Benito community. We ask for guidance and wisdom to conduct a productive and successful meeting today. Please guide our decisions, our conversations, and help us grow as a community and as a district. Amen.
Amen.
Let's give a round of applause to these fine students. And also, the parents will be recognized. Parents, let's give them a round of applause.
Cecilia and Isaiah, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, we'd like to thank you for being here tonight. Great job. Best of luck on all your future endeavors. We're proud to have you as students here at San Benito CISD. And we'd like to recognize you with a token of our appreciation. I'd like to ask both of you, Isaiah, if you would start with Mr. Corona to my right here with our board members and make the round so we can present you with a certificate and a shake and a handshake for both of you being here today. Thank you. Parents, thank you as well for all you do. Appreciate it. Mr. Rodriguez, you as well. Isaiah, here you go. Congratulations on the certificate. Thank you for being here tonight. Great job with the pledge. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Great job. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, we move on to the next agenda item. It's public comment, 1.4. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Before we begin, I will remind our audience members of the board's procedures for handling public comment. The public comment portion of our meeting is available to members of the public who wish to address any topic. Anyone who would like to speak during public comment must sign in prior to the start of the meeting and list the topics they want to discuss. Each public comment speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board for each topic. If more than 10 speakers are signed up to speak on the same topics, all additional speakers on that item shall be limited to 2 minutes. However, any public testimony speaker who requires a translator will receive up to 6 minutes to address the board. Please keep your comments or criticism civil and courteous. Please avoid using profanity and refrain from making personal attacks on others during your opportunity to speak. Lastly, we ask that you do not discuss students who are not your own children. If a speaker is seeking board resolution of a specific complaint, that concern should be addressed through the district's grievance process. District policy DGBA has been established for addressing employee complaints. Policy FNG is the avenue for filing parent complaints, and policy GF addresses community member complaints. Grievance forms can be obtained at any campus administration office or at the district central administration offices. I would like to add that due to our COVID-19 protocols, the board meeting is not open to the general public, but we have received several public comments in writing, so we will begin with those. The first public comment comes to us from Mrs. Mary Maney, San Benito High School math teacher, and it reads as such. Dr. Carmen and Board of Trustees, my name is Mary Maney, and I am a teacher at San Benito High School. I would like to make voice my concern on a comment made at the committee meetings on June 2nd and make comments on administrative agenda item 2.2 from the committee meetings last Tuesday, as well as tonight's agenda item 3.3, item 4.6, and item 4.15. I appreciate the opportunity to express my opinion and to ask questions. Comment made at committee meetings. A comment was made at the committee meetings by Ms. Lopez to Dr. Cruz about her not being a part of the giving committee being discussed at that moment. So she didn't have the right to say anything. Besides being extremely rude and obnoxious, the comment is making me question whether this new board is going to be changing the way that the committee meetings have been held in the past. I have always enjoyed the fact that the entire board was present for the majority of the committee meetings, and each member was allowed to comment and discuss any of the matters before that committee in full disclosure to the public who attended the meetings. I know that the new members have campaigned and professed to be fully transparent. I really am concerned about the direction that the board seems to be heading, and it is not a fully transparent direction. The division in this board is very pronounced and is getting worse. I wish you would remember that these meetings are open on Facebook, and San Benito is starting to not be showing the gold standard that we are claiming to be. Keep this in mind when you are talking about methods to retain students and staff. Administrative agenda item 2.2, BED local. I realize that this item was tabled at the meeting, but I would like to ask a further question, which I notice has been incorporated into the guidelines of the meeting agenda. The discussion in the past was a limit of 3 minutes per agenda item, but the proposed BED and the guidelines of the meeting agendas says an individual's comments to the board shall not exceed 3 minutes per meeting. I am just a little unclear as to the intent of the change that is being made. Are we going to be timed by agenda item or by meeting? I realize that restricting one person to 3 minutes total for a meeting might shorten the 4-hour-long meeting, but we have been all over the place with BED local. It would be very nice to finally set what we, the public, are allowed to speak on and for how long. Again, it would be nice to make sure that we, board and public, are on the same page with this policy. Approval regarding purchases over $25,000. I realize that the list comprises of the anticipated expenditures for the upcoming year that will total over $25,000 per contractor. My question is about the use of open POs for known large single or regularly reoccurring expenditures. If we know that we are going to be spending approximately $30,000 every 2 weeks, are you going to set up that supplier or retailer with an open PO for the estimated amount of the yearly expenditures? If not, how frequently are you planning on holding special board meetings to approve individual POs for amounts over $25,000? Item 4.6, ICLE agreement. I would like to say that I have benefited tremendously from Mr. White's professional developments with regard to rigor and relevance. I was part of Cohort 1. ICLE's approach to rigor and relevance has clarified and simplified two concepts that have given me trouble since day one. I have taught in several different districts and 2 other states in my teaching career, and I have found that there has not been a standard definition or picture of what rigor and relevance look like. ICLE has user-friendly methods to help teachers understand how well they are doing in these 2 areas. The follow-up with the previous cohorts each year helps keep us in the upper end of the rubric. These follow-ups help us continue to develop good and better teaching habits, as well as let us know what other districts, states are doing and or experiencing, which keeps us feeling more in touch with the rest of the teaching world. I'm very happy with the inclusion, item 4.15 compensation plan. I'm very happy with the inclusion of a longevity stipend in September and the COVID stipend in December. My question is about the mid-year stipend that teachers and staff earned by watching videos during the first couple of months of school. Is this going away, or has it just been renamed to the COVID stipend? If it has been renamed, are the staff and teachers going to still be required to watch videos to earn it? Thank you again for the opportunity to voice my opinions and ask questions. I do apologize if the tone of some of my comments were not all sunshine and roses, but I am getting concerned about comments being made about our district from people outside of San Benito. Thank you, Mrs. Maney. Appreciate your public comment. Ms. Lopez, can you help with the time, please? The next agenda item, not the next agenda item. The next public comment comes to us from Ms. Alma Limon. She states, "Good evening, citizens of San Benito and board members. Before you decide to do any changes on public comments, you need to listen to this. I watched the meeting last week with such intent, and I couldn't believe my ears. What now? Now you're wanting to do changes to public comments. Weren't you, Mr. President and Vice President, pushing for public comment along with your friend, the realtor, Rosie G. Garcia? You aimed for public comments regardless if it was negative or positive. Are you resenting the public comments? Why? Weren't you, Ms. Vice President, the one who was helping the Rosie G. Garcia during her campaign to bring public comments back, when in fact public comments never went anywhere? You were seen with her and the police officer near our grocery store holding signs. I want to quote you, Ms. Vice President, and this is from your Facebook page. We don't elect people to rule or even lead us. I will always stand for your constitutional rights. Elected officials are here to serve you. Then, why are you limiting the constitutional rights of our community members? They have earned their rights as citizens of these United States. We should be limited just because now the majority wants to rule? If we don't have patience to be hearing both the good and the bad about our district, then we shouldn't be elected officials. This is a quote from you, Ms. Vice President, on your Facebook account, which was quoted also by the San Benito Reporter. Ma'am, this is you. What a hypocrite. And now you want to limit our freedom of speech, our right to public comments, to supposedly 2 minutes. Not only that, you will decide when and only when public comments should be heard. We live in a democracy, not a dictatorship. That is what you have become, a dictator. You have taken over the meetings, not allowing others to speak, just you and the president of the board. What happened to constitutional rights, Ms. Vice President? What is wrong with you? Get off your high horse and do what you were elected to do. Stop micromanaging and stop impeding on the day-to-day school system. The new majority all ran on full transparency, but it is very obvious they lied to everyone. All 4 are there for their personal gain, and you've seen it in only 2 meetings. Board president, self-proclaimed educational guru who has never worked in 6A district and has a horrible employment past, comes in and tries to micromanage and brings in his friends. And Ms. Vice President, you need counseling. Very hateful individuals knows is self-serving and is impeding day-to-day operations of our wonderful district. You make our directors look bad when in fact they are so knowledgeable in their field because they answer all the questions that you, Ms. Vice President, throw out at them. Then you have a board member who is board president's puppet and is only there to look out for his daughter's pay. And then on the outside, you have Sandra Tumberlinson, the puppeteer, who just plain useless, period. She is a grand puppet master. Everyone knows what she is capable of doing out of hate. Doesn't she remember she was once a teacher at BCMS? The new majority has done nothing but violated the Open Meetings Act when they brought in the general counsel at much higher rate than the previous. What happened to taxpayers' dollars? Well, it doesn't pertain to their friends. Citizens of San Benito, if you can't see all that is wrong with this majority, then you are plain blind. Respectfully, Ms. Alma Limon. Ms. Limon, thank you for your public comment as well. Next public comment comes to us by Rosie Olivares. She states, hello, I am writing this public comment to expose several disturbing things I've seen in the last 2 meetings. This new majority, controlled by Sandra Tumberlinson, has quickly turned into a joke. First of all, the new majority has definitely violated the Open Meeting Act when hiring the new general counsel that apparently no one knew. Our board president lied on the record not knowing this new attorney. You were caught with your hands in the cookie jar. What a joke. Then you, Vice President, are a total joke too. You have turned 2-hour meetings into 5+ hour meetings, and the only one making money is our attorney friend, Steve Weller. Now board president wants to decrease the number and time for public comments. Really? These folks ran on that full transparency mumbo jumbo BS. Now our community can see the true colors of these people. The feds need to investigate the recent dealings of this majority, and I bet you they'll find something for sure. Thank you, Ms. Rosie Olivares. Ms. Olivares, thank you. Next next public comment comes from Tomas Montemayor. Good evening, Board of Trustees. My name is Tomas Montemayor, and I have an opinion about the possible hiring of another new school board attorney. When the attorney associated with Kevin O'Hanlon spoke at the committee meeting last week, he said that his firm had only worked in San Benito schools for 1 week. Not true. Maybe the board members, with a couple exceptions, are too young to remember, but Kevin O'Hanlon worked in the district over 20 years ago in the firing of head coach Tommy Roberts' case. Remember? So Mr. O'Hanlon is not new to San Benito after all, like the attorney and others suggested. Also in a formal letter of complaint to the president of the Mexican American School Board Association, MASBA, Lydia Hernandez of Phoenix, Arizona, reported that in February 2018, the then San Benito School Board President, Michael Vargas, physically assaulted her at a MASBA conference reception. Then, as she was attempting to give her report to the San Antonio Police, and I quote from her report, Kevin O'Hanlon of O'Hanlon Law Firm and MASBA sponsor audibly scoffed and gestured that my concerns were a joke and were to be dismissed. I continue to quote, the MASBA attorney failed to disclose himself as an attorney at law while the San Antonio police officer was taking my assault report against the San Benito Board President, Michael Vargas. He, O'Hanlon, forced himself into the conversation I was having with the officer and proceeded to roll his eyes in a dismissive gesture while I was making a formal complaint. The attorney represented the MASBA board in an intimidating fashion and disregarded any guidance to the board regarding my assault and sexual harassment allegations, unquote. All of this information is included in the San Antonio Police Report number 180-39679. I'm not sure that the board or the citizens knew these facts, even though they are public information, but Kevin O'Hanlon has a past with San Benito. I believe making a clean break with these past attorneys who were clearly associated with a former majority was a smart idea on the part of the board. Keep up the good work. In closing, I quote Eli Wiesel. Time's up. Thank you, Mr. Tomas Montemayor. This next comment comes to us by Sally Gonzalez. It states, hello, my name is Sally Gonzalez, and I am currently attending Riverside Middle School. During the 2020-2021 school year, I was part of the tennis program. During the tennis season, there were a few things that came to my attention. The transportation and the place we were practicing in when we were not at the high school was concerning as well as very time-consuming. When we wouldn't go to the high school, we would have to practice in the school parking lot, which was in the back of the school. During the time we would practice, some of the staff would come outside and walk across the parking lot, which we would have to stop practicing and move out of the way. The most concerning part of practicing in the back of the school was the fact that there were cars there. Sometimes when we would practice, our tennis balls would hit the cars. Another situation that could possibly put ourselves at risk is the fact that the cars would leave the parking lot and could possibly hit us. Lastly, when we would go to the high school, we would have to take a bus which would drop kids off at their home, which took out most of our practice. When we would finally get to the high school, we would not have much time to practice. It would help all of us and the future tennis players at Riverside Middle School if you added a tennis court to our campus so we do not have the risks and complications that we had this year. Sally Gonzalez, thank you for your public comment. Next public comment is from Alexis Carl. Hello, I am Alexis Carl, a current student at Riverside Middle School and a part of the Riverside Middle School tennis team. I am writing to you about building tennis courts at my school. Currently, myself and my team must travel all the way to San Benito High School for practice. The problem surrounding this is the fact that we share a bus with kids that are dropped off to their homes before we can get to our practice about 20 late. The 2 times we had to go to the high school. Also, the days we do not attend practice at the high school, we have practice in a parking lot behind the school, which raises concerns with safety. My team on many occasions have had to stop practice so we do not get ran over by cars passing through, and sometimes our tennis balls hit the cars, therefore may cause damage. I hope this letter will help you understand that Riverside needs these courts for our safety and our practice. Alexis Carl, thank you for your public comment. The next public comment comes from Alvaro Martinez. Hello, my name is Alvaro Martinez. I am a resident in San Benito. I have 5 children who currently attend Riverside Middle School and have found the athletics program a benefit to their educational transcripts. It has come to my attention the limited resources available to my children at their campus. Please take into consideration the lack of equality, tennis court and track field in all middle school athletic programs and the differences each has to their full potential. Riverside Middle School, being far from the city, has been left with little to no resources to support the students. Families who live in the countryside, outside city limits, are traveling from a distance to provide transportation for their children. Families of Riverside and myself feel discriminated and want more support for our children and school. The school has potential and students eager to participate, but not providing proper equipment and transportation will hinder the goals and expectations the school has for the community. At this present time, our children have participated in the tennis program, and it has come to my attention the program does not have their own tennis courts. It is a concern. Our children in the tennis program are having to be transported by bus to the San Benito High School and other locations to practice tennis. The locations my children have discussed, when not transported to the San Benito High School, cause great concern and raise safety issues to their surroundings. An example of a safety concern is the school's parking lot being the space students practice, where cars are parked and moved in and out throughout the practice. Using the school's parking lot is putting students at risk of getting injured or potentially damaging facility vehicles. It is unfortunate the district has overlooked the Riverside campus tennis program due to lack of supervision and improper facility management. The students of Riverside are joining bus routes that drop students off at their homes and are awaiting their arrival at the San Benito High School. Transportation efforts and locations has put complications to the students' time in the program and the family schedules for pickup. I would like to see an action item on the school district's board agenda in the close future on how this matter will be resolved. Thank you, Mr. Martinez, for your public comment. The next public comment comes to us from Ms. Monica Munoz. Good evening, Dr. Carmen and esteemed members of the board. My name is Monica Munoz. I am a counselor at Miller Jordan Middle School. I have enjoyed working with the students, parents, faculty, and staff in my hometown for the past 11 years. I would like to address agenda item 4.15 regarding counselors' master's degree stipends. Counselors do not receive a stipend for having a master's degree. Per our job description, counselors are required to have a minimum of 3 years teaching and a master's degree. Classroom teachers who have a master's degree do receive a $1,000 stipend. During the previous administrative committee discussion, the counselor's salary was compared to teacher's salary. On paper, it may seem that counselors earn a very high salary. However, I would like to put it into perspective. All counselors are 11-month employees and teachers are 10-month employees. I have 11 years of teaching experience, and my daily rate as a counselor is only $14 more per day than if I was a teacher. I made this calculation based on my current daily rate and the current teacher salary scale for 11 years of experience. If counselors were 10-month employees like teachers, the base salaries would be very comparable, even though counselors are required to have a graduate level degree. In addition, after reviewing job descriptions for pay grade 3, where counselors are currently at, many other positions in the same pay grade only require a bachelor's degree. Several positions in pay grade 4 also only require a bachelor's degree, yet are compensated at a higher rate than counselors. As stated previously at board and committee meetings, counselors have increasingly demanding job duties and responsibilities at every level. Therefore, an agreeable compensation should be considered. Thank you for your time and consideration. Ms. Munoz, thank you as well for your public comment. The next public comment comes to us from Mrs. Evelyn Goodwin. Mr. Board President, Superintendent Carmen, and Board of Trustees, I am a private citizen of San Benito. Since moving back to my hometown, I have become interested and engaged in the activities of the school district which I grew up in. I have grave concerns with what I have witnessed in the last few school board meetings. A certain trustee has openly demonstrated being an advocate for specific vendors, become visibly upset over specific vendors being questioned. This is quite disturbing and leaves us, the community, puzzled. Why is this trustee advocating for certain vendors? Why does this trustee become so visibly upset when specific, not all vendors, services, or contracts are questioned? Something is wrong with this picture, and by becoming so upset and taking out anger on other trustees that bring up questions only highlights the concerns of impropriety. I request that this school district take action to hire a forensic auditor to review current contracts and any inappropriate ties or links that school board trustees may have with any vendor. It is unfortunate for our students, staff, employees, and citizens of San Benito to witness such acts of betrayal. I urge all citizens of San Benito to put your support behind an audit to bring forth any impropriety. The appearance of impropriety is already apparent. Mrs. Goodwin, thank you as well for your public comment. The next public comment comes to us from Mr. Randall Gomez. Good evening, Board of Trustees. As you are all aware, I had a contract to represent the school district in the investigation of DIA complaints. The new majority recently terminated all contracts between San Benito CISD and their Cameron County and Hidalgo County attorneys to outsource its work to a firm based out of Austin, Travis County, Texas. During that meeting and a few subsequent meetings, several questions were raised and a few issues were left confusing the public as well as the district employees. First, my contract was set at a cap of nearly $50,000. Misinformation was spread that my firm and the other firm who had a similar contract were paid each nearly $50,000 in full. That is simply untrue. No, the school district was not paying nearly $100,000 in total to the two firms handling DIA complaints. That was a cap, which we could not surpass without board approval. And by the looks of it, it would have been essentially impossible to reach. I simply got paid for the work I did at an hourly rate, not a lump sum of nearly $50,000. Secondly, the school board's vice president made a false statement about myself, which I personally wanted to clear up. She, during a public board meeting, suggested that I represented an individual who she filed a petition for removal from office with the district. The vice president herself filed the petition, and she was put on notice of this individual's legal counsel. Neither my firm's name nor my name appears on any court records as his attorney of record. Yes, I happen to be an attorney who appeared at one of the hearings to simply support a friend of 25 years. However, I did not represent him in any legal capacity. Lastly, I would like to again thank Dr. Carmen and each and every member of the Board of Trustees for the contract that I once had. It was a pleasure. As the only San Benito CISD graduate representing the district and a son of a remarkable retired San Benito CISD educator, I took pride in my work for the district. I personally thank you for the opportunity while it lasted, and I wish the district much prosperity in the future. Best, Randall Randy Gomez. Mr. Gomez, thank you. The next public comment comes from Jose Morales. Good evening, board and staff. Several of us old retired administrators have been comparing notes and want to bring some things to your attention for clarification. Elementary and secondary school principals, as well as directors, are members of the Texas Association of Elementary School Principals and the Texas Association of Secondary School Principals, and we get our professional liability insurance from these groups, as well as the money for attorneys to defend us. Just like teachers also get their attorneys from their professional groups if they join a group. So when the superintendent stated at the last meeting that he needed to hire attorneys to defend his individual administrators, we knew our colleagues were being used and blamed for something that isn't true. Yes, the district pays administrators yearly membership fees, but then the individual administrator purchases the professional liability insurance just like teachers do. That liability insurance includes a representation of an attorney, reimbursement of bail bonds, and attorneys' fees for lawsuits seeking monetary damages just like teachers have. Google it, it's all online. The fact that the superintendent wants to use the so-called needs of his administrators in order to get the attorney he wants is suspicious. And isn't one of the attorneys in the O'Hanlon, Demerith, and Castillo law firm under investigation at this time for alleged misuse of funds in El Paso CISD? The law firm says Cabrera rejoined the firm in May 2021 after 7.5 years as superintendent of schools for the El Paso Independent School District. Google elpasomatters.org, internal audit reveals EPISD superintendent conflict of interest story. I'd be careful with that firm. Too many skeletons in that closet. The term fact check is popular nowadays, and this is what we are doing, because even though the employees may know these facts, the public in general may not. It's important for the citizens of San Benito School District to know the truth, not what is being used by the superintendent to try to get his way. Mr. Morales, thank you for your public comment. Next comment comes from Margaret de la Garza. My name is Margaret de la Garza. Good evening, board, superintendent, and all present and watching. I was shocked at the public comment from the person who criticized the board for having long meetings. Maybe the meeting is long because now the board members are asking questions and getting answers for the public that the old board never did. That's called transparency. All the old board did was agree to everything presented. Maybe they just didn't know enough to ask questions or were trained to just always agree with what the president said, but that's for another public comment topic. Or maybe the meeting is long because after the real president has done his job on behalf of the board, thank the person who spoke, the old president has to say thanks over and over to everyone again. Him and his due diligence, maybe he can't face the fact that he is not president anymore. Or maybe the meeting is long because the superintendent drags out all the directors and has them present reasons to let him keep an extra $25,000 spending money. I think that is coercion. How can a director say no to the superintendent when told to get out there and justify the extra $25,000? So there they were, one right after the other, telling half-truths, exaggerating stories that made them look like they couldn't plan ahead in their department, pretending that the public doesn't know that the majority of these things are ordered at the beginning of the school when the budget comes in, especially things over $25,000 with no questions, some just plain telling lies for their boss, some directors admitting that they had been told they had to be there and speak, some were actually trembling, and the lowest insinuating that the children were going to be hurt. Yes, the superintendent really intimidated them into this, and again, it's called coercion of employees. Finally, if you don't want to watch long meetings, ma'am, just turn off your computer. After all, you are wasting money on electricity. It's a free country, and I'm glad our board members want to spend the time to educate us. I'd rather pay the attorneys time for the knowledge we are getting now than live in ignorance like we have the past 3 years. Ms. de la Garza, thank you for your public comment. Few more. This next one comes from Laura Martinez. This public comment is regarding the former attorney that the 3 board members made such a fuss about at the last meeting. They complained about the cost of the new attorney, Mr. Weller, compared to the former attorney, Mr. Torres. What about the $10,700 total donation reported as election income that this past attorney, Tony Torres, made to the November election, which elected 2 out of 5 board members? Not to mention the amount he donated to the main campaign to elect 1 out of 3 board members. $10,700. That's a lot of money for someone whose job it is to be fair and impartial and to represent the whole board. How could these 4 new, overwhelmingly elected majority board members consider keeping this man employed? And what kind of advice did this former attorney, Tony Torres, give the superintendent, who has about 8 to 10 current discrimination lawsuits pending against experienced employees he fired? The board should call into question the superintendent's management skills and also question why school attorney Tony Torres allowed this to happen, costing the district hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney fees and future settlement fees with these ex-employees. Why is the old board questioning the cost of the new attorney when the old one is costing the district hundreds of thousands of dollars? And that's because the lawsuits haven't even been settled yet, and we don't know the total cost yet. That will be more money Mr. Torres has cost us. Did you know that ex-board president Orlando Lopez was partner in a company in Hidalgo County called Superior Advanced Genetics of South Texas with a doctor and another partner who was found to be charged federally for bribing medical personnel to purchase the equipment from their company? Well, our former school attorney, Tony Torres, at the same time was listed as agent of record for that company. Did Orlando Lopez properly disclose and file the district conflict of interest paperwork for his personal business and pre-existing attorney-client relationship for the people of San Benito to see? Shouldn't the citizens know about the pre-existing business deals of its trustees with our former school attorney, Tony Torres? Perhaps that connection and others like it is why Tony Torres charged less to the district than the new man, Mr. Weller. By the way, citizens, in case you didn't know, the attorney represents the board, not the superintendent. His job is to help the board. So when the majority changed, the attorney, Tony Torres, who was clearly on the minority side, had to be replaced because his decision-making was severely in question with 10,700 reasons to do so. Ms. Martinez, thank you for your public comment. Next comment comes to us from Rosalinda G. Garcia. Good evening, Board of Trustees. As we all know, your commitment as an elected trustee will take time away from your family and professions. I sincerely thank you and your families. With the passing of BED local after 4 attempts, it's a justified policy change that now allows everyone to speak on what is important to the individual. I will share the following comments, yet do know that it feels great to once again have a voice. As of present day, the community has unfortunately fallen victim to witnessing activities by certain board trustees being disrespectful during meetings, rolling of eyes, interrupting, and snide remarks being made before the mic is muted. This lack of properly using the Roberts Rule of Order cannot continue and should be addressed. Social media bashing of board trustees is at its worst. Hiding behind fake social media IDs fools no one. It is evident that budgetary concerns are also a high priority to some trustees, and that is exactly what the community has been asking for. This is a positive and welcome change. It is puzzling how some trustees have become visibly upset over the fact that questions are being brought up concerning the district's expenditures. This should be a concern to all trustees. Let's take a historical journey. On the April 24, 2017 edition of the SBN, it reported information on potential SBCISD school board candidates. One question asked, should teachers be awarded pay raises? One candidate responded with the following: if I am entrusted to serve my community in the capacity as a school trustee, I will make it my personal goal to carefully evaluate the school district's budget and expenditures accordingly. Now to the present. At a most recent school board meeting, May 18, 2021, a trustee questioned duties of the board by stating, the majority wants to micromanage the budget and look at every dollar spent. Community of SBCISD, taxpayers and paycheck earners, you wouldn't just give your money away to strangers and never question how that money is spent. The same goes for budget expenditures. Our trustees need to ask in turn, we become informed. That is financial transparency. It is a huge responsibility overseeing a multi-million-dollar budget comprised of local, state, federal tax dollars, and if any question or concern is made, the duty of the board should be to seek out the answer or solution. It is the community's duty and responsibility to keep this board informed of her concerns and ask any questions on how budgetary funds are spent. After all, this is the community's district, this is the community's children, this is the community's tax dollars, and this is the community's future. Thank you. Ms. Garcia, thank you for your public comment. And I believe that's it, folks. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, who supplied us with public comments. Those are always welcome. We move on to agenda item 2, Superintendent's Report. 2.1, Cash Account Report. Dr. Carmen.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Vicky Pettis will present information to the board.
I'm going to give it a moment so that we can get it up onto the screen. Okay, we're going to start with the bank balances. Our cash accounts, the total amount for the cash accounts is $6,629,215.31. Our investment accounts is $56,942,180.23 for a total of $63,571,395.54. Our student and campus activities. The total amount for campus and student activities for our campuses and departments is $530,647.78. And behind it, you do have the detail for each of the campuses as well as all of the activities that they have. We're going to go on to the revenues and expenditures. We'll start with the revenues, and I've highlighted the areas that I usually call out. So the total of the general operating fund revenues that we have realized to date is this is really small, $92,105,033.85. For federal programs, $21,050,674.23. Interest and sinking is $7,442,780.40. And for capital projects, we have realized $40,841,102.41. That $841,000 is all of our interest up to date from the very beginning of our capital funds. On the expenses, the expenditures to date, our $88,540,645.07 for our general fund. Federal programs is $21,095,585.34. Interest and sinking is at $7,803,947.77. And our capital projects is $9,907,474.82. Next up is our tax collection reports. So on the left, we have the M&O, maintenance and operation for current and delinquent amounts. In the middle, we have the INS, our interest and sinking for current and delinquent amounts. And our total tax collections to date is $15,291,306.43. So that is 91.65% of our entire levy. And compared to last year at this time, last year it was 88.01%, so we're doing 3% better than we did as of last year. And we will move on to the check registers. For general fund, we have $2,090,927.64. Student activity, $40,209.39. No construction project payments, no scholarship payments. Payroll checks, total of $6,403,625.86. And their payroll liabilities is $1,523,628.75 for a total of $10,058,391.64. And you do have the detail of these check registers in case anybody has any questions. And I'll go ahead and open it up in case anybody has any comments or questions that they'd like to share.
Any questions? Ms. Vicki, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
We move on to Section 3, Consent Agenda. In order to promote efficient meetings, the board may act upon more than one item by a single vote through the use of consent agenda. Consent items placed on the agenda shall be marked with an asterisk. Consent items are items for which no board discussion is anticipated and for which the superintendent recommends approval. Prior to the time which approval of consent agenda is had, at the request of any member of the Board of Trustees, any item on the consent agenda shall be removed and given individual consideration. 3.1, request approval to accept gifts bequests for the 2020-2021 school year. Questions? Consent. 3.2, request approval of budget amendments for 2020-2021 school year. Questions? Consent. Item 3.3, request approval regarding purchases over $25,000. Questions?
Question.
Item 3.4, request approval to award proposals for RFP 0521-DPCNP Dairy Products for the Child Nutrition Program. Questions? Consent. Item 3.5, request approval of the lease agreement for district-wide copiers. Questions? Consent. Item 3.6, request approval on installation of boiler at Fred Booth Elementary and Landrum Educational Complex. Questions? Consent. Section 4, consent agenda administration, item 4.1, request approval of the memorandum of understanding MOU between the San Benito CISD and Serving Children and Adults in Need Incorporated, SCAN Inc., for the 2021-2022 school year. Questions? Consent. Item 4.2, request approval of the memorandum of understanding MOU between San Benito CISD and Texas A&M AgriLife 4-H charter agreement for the 2021-2022 school year. Question? Consent. Item 4.3, request approval of the memorandum of understanding MOU between San Benito CISD and Cameron County Juvenile Justice Department for the 2021-2022 school year. Questions? Consent. Item 4.4, request approval of the memorandum of understanding between San Benito CISD and Cameron County Juvenile Probation Department for the 2021-2022 school year. Questions? Consent. Item 4.5, request approval of the memorandum of understanding MOU between San Benito CISD and Cameron County Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program, JJAEP, for the 21-2022 school year. Questions? Consent. Item 4.6, request approval of service agreement between San Benito CISD and Hutton Mifflin Harcourt for International Center for Leadership in Education, ICLE, for the 2021-2022 school year. Questions?
Question.
Item 4.7, request approval on the license renewal of Summit K-12 for the 2021-2022 school year. Question? Consent. Item 4.8, request approval of the purchase of Dreambox Learning Digital Program district-wide. Questions?
Question.
Item 4.9, request approval of the purchase of Edgenuity digital programs. Questions? Consent. Item 4.10, request approval of the purchase of Nearpod and Flocabulary digital programs. Questions? Consent. 4.11, request approval of the purchase of Education Galaxy digital program. Questions? Consent. Item 4.12, request approval of the purchase of STEMscopes digital program for grades K through 8. Questions? Consent. Item 4.13, request approval of the purchase of STEMscopes digital program for high school students. Questions? Consent. Item 4.14, request approval of the purchase of iStation digital program. Questions? Consent. Item 4.15, request approval of the 2021-2022 compensation plan. Questions? And I also have a question. Item 4.16, request approval of the Educational Experience Affiliation Agreement, MOU, between San Benito CISD and the University of Texas at Rio Grande Valley, UT-RGV. Questions? Consent. Item 4.17, review, discussion, and possible action on Board Policy Update 117. Questions?
Question.
Item 4.18, request approval of resolution of the board regarding ESSER 3 and policy CB local, state, and federal revenue sources. Questions? Consent. Item 4.19, request approval of board minutes. Questions? I have a question. All right, with that said, I would need a motion to approve all consent agenda items in section 3, except for item 3.3, request approval regarding purchases over $25,000. all consent agenda items under administration except for 4.6, 4.8, 4.15, and 4.17. Do I have a motion? And 4.19. Oh, thank you, and 4.19. Thank you for that.
So moved.
Rudy? Oh, Mario. It has been moved by Mario Silva and seconded by Mr. Medrano. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, so moving on, moving back actually to consent agenda item 3.3, request approval regarding purchases over $25,000. Ms. Lopez?
Yes, sir, thank you. Good evening, Ms. Perez. The question on this agenda item is, we do have some lists on there of things that have already previously been approved, like the contracts for some of these here. And so the question is, what is the purpose of having this agenda item, if you can clarify for us, to have it here as an agenda item?
Payment of it is what we are requesting, so that there's complete transparency on those items over 25,000. So it's just, if you'd like, we can hold those back. If you would prefer that, if the board prefers that we have the contract and the approval of the purchase all said and done in that one agenda item, that's perfectly okay. So this is just so that y'all are aware that we are doing those POs and making those payments.
So it doesn't necessarily need anything to be approved. It's just bringing awareness to us, giving us a list of the items that you would have an open PO for?
For this list, yes. So my staff does do open POs in the very beginning of the school year so that we don't have to bring those back every time. Otherwise, we would be doing those every single month. So Frontline, Skyward, those were approved last month, but the contract was approved. And it's understood that it's going to be paid, but this is just for transparency purposes.
Just for clarification, I don't think that's the case on all of these, right? Like Verizon, we haven't signed a contract for those wireless devices. Magic Valley Electric, I mean, we're gonna get their service, but we're gonna be
Correct.
required to pay for it.
Some of them, you're absolutely correct. Some of them are unspoken. Bonds are already, those were already taken care of when we first did the bonds, but just so that you know that these are the payments that are coming up. So that when you see them on your check register and it's a large sum, you are aware that that was gonna come up.
And as Dr. Carmen mentioned, the Verizon one, well, my question to him during the week was, why are we looking at approving the 93,000 that was paid last year and using it towards this year if we won't have kids working from home this coming year? And so I know, Dr. Carmen, you said that was changing, that it was only gonna be for.
Yes.
Go ahead, if you can explain, sir.
Yes, ma'am. So I think Mrs. Pettis included a draft PO or a sample PO from last year. That purchase order was for student hotspot devices for the families, the ones we checked out. But if you look behind that PO, the actual estimates there, those are for board wireless devices, administration wireless devices. They're not for student devices.
Correct.
So if these are not things that need to be approved, it doesn't need to be a consent agenda item, in the future, can we just put it under the superintendent's reports? And I'll refer that to Mr. Weller. If it's just for presentation to let us know, the board, that these payments will be made over the 25,000 for these companies, can they just put it on the superintendent's report instead?
Mr. Weller, excuse me, do you have your mic on? You need to push that button, please, for the record. Thank you.
Pardon me, excuse me.
My fault for not letting you know.
I assume everyone could hear me all right? Okay. What I was saying was basically if it's an existing contract that has a prescribed monthly payment, then that would have been approved by the board, and I'm just speaking in generalities. If it's a master services contract where you have a variable monthly amount, then I can see it being included within this number to confirm the approval of the board.
Ms. Vicki, and this is just a question, in reviewing some of these statements, basically some of these, or most of these, not all, but most of these are dated as encumbrances for 2020, 2021, right? And so, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay, you're the guru as far as the budgeting goes. So we are continuing to do business with most of these vendors, for lack of better words. And so basically, in some of these, we're basically just under the assumption that we may very possibly meet that dollar amount this coming year, correct?
Correct.
So again, just to reiterate, much of what is in here in this section is informational rather than needing to be approved.
However, they still are over the 25,000 threshold, which is why I brought them over.
Correct. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
I have a question, Vicki. There's two electric companies here. Why is there two electric companies?
Just the parts of town. Some of them are serviced by Cavallo and some of them are not.
I think Magic Valley does a lot of our schools in the country. Yeah.
I see. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions? At this point, I would need a motion to approve consent agenda item 3.3, request approval regarding purchases over $25,000.
So move. Second.
Was that you, Mr. Lopez?
Yes, sir, it was.
And Rudy Corona?
No, Mr. Silva.
Okay, I can't. It happens too fast, sorry, thank you. All right, it has been moved by Mr. Lopez and seconded by Mario Silva to approve purchases over $25,000. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to consent agenda item 4.6, request approval of service agreement between San Benito CISD and Hutton Mifflin Harcourt for International Center for Leadership and Education, ICLE, for the 2021-2022 school year. Ms. Lopez.
On the ISO, I don't know what you call it. Do you call it program system? ICLE. Okay, so for ICLE, I was reviewing some of the information on the education code. So the question on here is this ICLE one of those that would be approved by the education code? And the reason I'm asking that is because it says a school district that requisitions supplemental instructional materials shall certify to the agency that the supplemental instructional materials in combination with any other instructional materials or supplemental instructional materials used by the district or school cover the essential knowledge and skills identified under section 28.002. So is this something that meets the requirements of what the education code says, education code 31? So basically what I'm understanding from this is that it has to be something that is aligned with the essential knowledge and skills. So is ISO aligned?
The thing is that ICLE, it's not a curriculum, so it's not completely aligned with the TEKS. However, it is helping our teachers when they plan for their lessons to help support to teach the TEKS effectively. So it's not a curriculum.
Right, it's not instructional materials, which that's what you're referring to, Ms. Lopez. Instructional materials would be if you're buying any textbooks, any consumables, printed materials, or online materials. This is professional development, so it does not align with the code that you're referencing.
Okay, and I was asking because it says the Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and they do provide educational materials, right?
They do.
They do.
Okay, so then the next question would be, because it is something that is used more for professional development, and some of it is for coaching our teachers, is that, you know, as overseers of our taxpayer money, one of the things that we have to look into is, can we provide this in-house? Is this something that you all can do as directors versus paying almost $300,000 to a company that will be doing this for our teachers? I understand that you all have had training already. Is there such thing as a trainer of trainers? Are you all able to provide services for our teachers instead of outsourcing to an outside company?
They do not offer a trainer of trainers, and when we initiated this initiative with ICLE, it was with the intent that we would do it 3 with the possible of the 4th year. And the intent during that time too was so that all of our administrators and teachers are well versed on the strategies for ICLE and when they are designing their lessons, so that we can move away from ICLE. So I know that the intent is not to continue with them next school year. So this is our 4th year, and this is the year that everyone knows that this is the year that we really, really have to learn this. Although we've been learning about it all of these years, doing things with Fidelity, having Mark come in with the coaching, the debriefing with the teachers and so forth, has really helped all of us really learn the process that ICLE has taught us. So is it something that we can do in-house? Eventually we will, and that is the intent.
Ms. Ramirez, if I may, so basically, once again, the intent of the program, if we could have possibly done it, but COVID got in the way, we would probably have already had enough time to sustain it. But so we're giving it 1 more year, and again, in the hopes that we can turn this around and sustain it in years to come.
That is correct.
Okay.
I have a question. This
Yes, sir.
includes all the teachers, or?
So every year, we've trained at least 210 teachers.
Okay.
But like I mentioned last week during the curriculum committee meeting, is that even those teachers that were trained, when Mr. White comes into the classrooms or the schools to visit the schools, he's visiting all 3 cohorts, because we've had it for 3 years. The other thing is that the principals, when we started year 1, they were using the language of rigor and relevance, not only when Mr. White would visit the classroom, but during PLC meetings, even during faculty meetings. They would have teachers even present lessons or, little mini lessons to talk about rigor and relevance. So if you were to go to any school today and talk about rigor and relevance, all the teachers are familiar with it. And I know the other thing we brought up too was in their PLC rooms, they have their rigor and relevance charts with their question stems as well. So it's something that we've been doing 3 years, and it's really made a positive impact, on our student achievement. If you were to look at our accountability over the last 3 years, we've gone from a C rating to a B rating. We were on the trajectory. I think we would have hit an A rating, but of course COVID happened.
Yeah.
But our trajectory was going upward.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. Thank you.
One of the things, if I may, I'd like to state as well for my colleagues here, is that one thing we need to consider is that we have turnover, whether we want it or not, whether it be administratively, whether it be teachers. And so once again, the training needs to continue. Once this Mark White isn't available and we need to sustain it, because of the turnover, that's our intent, to continue the program with basically a trainer or trainers, although that isn't a component of the program itself. Now, this one is a question, and this is just in all honesty, because not everybody's got to buy into the program. In any program that we purchase. In your opinion, Ms. Ramirez, what is the resistance from our teachers, if any? And again, I would not believe if you told me 100% of our teachers love it, because but is it minimal? In your opinion?
In my opinion, I will have to say that the first year was probably the most uncomfortable year because it was something new. But when you talk to Mark White and you see Mark White on your campus every day, or at least 4 times, right? But the principals, administrators got to see him a little bit more. But everyone is comfortable with Mr. White now, and I think the fact that we have a consistent consultant, I think that has also made a big difference, us helping carry this out effectively and everyone being comfortable with it. Was there resistance? Yes. And like you said, does everyone like it? Probably not. But with that being said, I know one of the questions that was brought up was about survey. So when we do trainings, we always conduct surveys through our Eduphoria platform. So when we had our training with ICLE, and this again, has been a while, but I'm sure the results would still be the same, and I can pull all that data out if you like for the last 3 years of all the ICLE trainings that we've had. But when we had our administrators training, 95% agree when asked if the workshop content is important to improve student outcomes. And of that 95% that agree, 86% strongly agreed. When we had the teacher training, 94% agreed when asked if the workshop content is important to improve student outcomes. And of the 94% that agreed, 79% strongly agreed. So the ratings are high when it comes to, is this something that is going to help our students?
And out of how many teachers were those percentages?
The teachers would have been the 210 teachers that got trained that year. And again, if you would like for me to pull out all the ratings for all these past 3 years, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Let me ask you, you provided some information about the local districts that are using it. I saw some of them were in 2017, some of them were in 2018. Are they still currently using them?
I know that Los Fresnos, Sharyland, and La Feria are the districts in the Rio Grande Valley that have used ICLE, that have had training in their districts, and have also attended the Model Schools Conference. I did not reach out to them to see if they are still currently using them, but one thing I will tell you is, like, we're gonna do what works for San Benito. The districts can do what they need to do. When we look at our needs in our district, I believe we are wholeheartedly doing what we need to do for our students.
Okay, and so you're saying we're gonna do what we need to do for San Benito. You started this program 4 years ago, and you said we moved to a B rating. However, you still had 3 campuses that were underperforming, and that's my concern. If this program really is helping, then why did we end up with 3 campuses?
And I think that's a comment Ms. Cornett addressed last time also, was maybe they were not at the ratings that they needed to be, but if we were to look at growth, there has been growth at our campuses. And again, this focuses on the lesson design, so it's helping teachers think about their lesson plans when they're developing their lessons.
Yes, Mr. Ramirez, I think it's also extremely important for the board to, and for these colleagues to understand that, the teachers do have a buy-in with this program.
They do.
And it's documented and the data is there to prove it.
And
So-
I wish I probably should have brought the video of when our teachers presented 2 years ago, just so that you can hear their feedback. I do encourage you, it was on April 3rd, 2019. There is a clip. We have 3 teachers that spoke at that time. And I'd like to share that with you. I can email that little video clip to you all so I can put that together. Instead of you watching the whole video, I'll just kind of cut that little piece out, because it was an hour long.
Yeah, please. Right.
Share with us.
Yeah.
It was extremely positive, the positive feedback from this program, so, the teachers buy into it, the kids will too, so I think it's
Right.
gonna be pretty good. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. I have one final question, Mr. Ramirez, and I'm sure you'll have a good answer for me, but when you say, and I agree, I'm not contradicting what you say, but one of my concerns, or a campus that I'm genuinely concerned for, and I've mentioned it over and over, my stomping ground, Frank Roberts. Okay, if we were to take Frank Roberts specifically, and this can be, I don't want to veer away from the agenda item, but specifically with ICLE, how would you be the person that I would ask how you're measuring the growth for that campus? Is it based on the assessment scores? Is it based on what is that growth being measured with or on?
So every quarter or every round that Mr. White does his observations, he always provides the feedback every round. So again, we're looking at teachers. The thing is, it could be different teachers, right, every quarter, but we're looking at the campus as a whole. But overall, we would also be looking at student growth. Again, Frank Roberts, we know that they have a ways to go, but I will say that there has been positive change on that campus. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it because of COVID, but we will see it in student achievement, but specifically in student growth.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, any further questions? Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
at this time, I would need a motion to approve the service agreement between San Benito CISD and Hutton Mifflin Harcourt for ICLE for the 2021-2022 school year.
So move.
I saw Rudy out there with his hand up, so I'm sorry, I know everybody wants to jump in. So can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so this time we're gonna go with Mr. Corona and Mr. Medrano. Sorry, Dr. Cruz, we'll get you now, okay. We'll go with you next time, Dr. Cruz.
It's fine, I don't need it.
Rudy Corona and Oscar Medrano. So with that said, it has been moved by Rudy Corona and seconded by Oscar Medrano to approve the service agreement between San Benito CISD and Hutton Mifflin Harcourt for ICLE for the 2021-2022 school year. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Ladies, once again. Hey, Ms. Cornett.
Hello, good afternoon.
All right, next agenda item, request approval for the purchase of Dreambox Learning Digital Program district-wide. Ms. Lopez.
Yes, sir, thank you. I'm going to my tab. Okay. We read a whole book right before our meeting. It's thick. Okay, all right, so on this one, on the Dreambox, can you tell me if this one is aligned with the TEKS?
It is TEKS aligned, and what, if you can see, I believe you have the usage and the growth reports on there. It is aligned with the TEKS. We have one of the reasons we are actually renewing it. We were looking to do a comparison to STAR because it gives us predictability. We wanted to see the use versus STAR performance, but again, COVID, we repeated that, right? But what we're doing this year, it has predictability insights. So we're going to be using it and using that, and then we'll be doing a comparison to our STAR data at the end of the year. So it should be able, as students are using it and working with it, give us a predictability factor. It also gives us, it's called predictive insights. It'll also give us groupings and next steps for teachers to go ahead and use for students.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great.
Ms. Cornett.
Yes, sir.
I did a little bit of research on Dreambox, and yes, I saw it's available to different states, and it just depends on the standards of each state, so
Right.
I know that it is somewhat TEKS aligned. So this Dreambox is K through
8.
K through 8? Okay, I'm gonna withdraw my question at this time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And, okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, anybody else?
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. At this point, I need a motion to approve the purchase of Dreambox Learning Digital Program district-wide. Okay, it has been, do I have a second? Okay, so I have who seconded again? Come on, guys. All right, I have a motion by Ariel Cruz and a second by Rudy Corona. All those in favor? Oh, this is to approve the purchase of Dreambox Learning Digital Program district-wide. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. All right, consent agenda item 4.15, request approval of the 2021-2022 compensation plan. Before we allow the discussion, Mr. Weller, I do feel that we need to discuss, I know Mr. Corona mentioned that he had a discussion item, but I'd like to move that we move this into, this agenda item into into an action agenda item. Can I do that, Mr. Weller? Okay, so I don't need a motion at this point? Okay, so with that said, if we can move it to the action agenda, and then we'll bring you back, Dr. Cruz. Thank you. Okay. All right, lastly, we have agenda item 4.17, review, discussion, and possible action on board policy update 1. Oh, sorry, again. Agenda item 4.17, review, discussion, and possible action on board policy update 117. Ms. Lopez, was that you?
Yes, sir, thank you. On the CH local, on what was added on there by TASB. The recommendation by TASB was the exception for emergency contracts, and it gives the superintendent the authority to make any decisions based on contracting for replacement, construction, or repair of school equipment or facilities. However, it doesn't have a limit on there, and so just the way we had already placed a limit on, for the 25,000 on purchases, I'd like to make a recommendation that we go ahead and include on there to limit to the 25,000 threshold, to make it specific to that. That's on the second paragraph. The second paragraph, Mr. Weller, on that information that TASB had recommended on that wording, but however, for us to include on there the limit of the 25,000 threshold.
This will be for Dr. Carmen. What would fall above that you've experienced in an emergency situation?
I don't think we've had anything above that in my tenure here. But I suppose if you had a hurricane situation where the board could not meet and we had to have equipment come in quickly to the school to repair, to batten it down, whatever, you all would have to come in and meet. So I think the purpose of this is strictly for an emergency, and if you put $25,000 on it, you don't need the exception. You can just cross out those second and third paragraphs and plan to meet if there's an emergency.
So
go
just,
ahead.
we've had crazy hurricane seasons. So if we all had to evacuate, we wouldn't be able to do, the school district wouldn't be able to do anything.
Not if it costs more than $25,000, that's correct. You'd have to meet.
Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Weller. When we limited or we decreased the purchasing power, for lack of better words, from 50,000 to 25,000, we were making reference to CH Local, and that was for professional services and things of that sort. I'm not a guru I'm learning about policy, but can you tell us, since this is a different policy, this is CV, and it's dealing with construction contracts valued at or above 50,000. Can you tell us about the procurement process? Is it the same as the CH Local, or is it different?
We were on CH Local, sir, on the second paragraph of CH Local. And then we can move on to CV.
My apologies for that. I had seen that same dollar amount, the $50,000, but it was on CV, so sorry about that. Thank you.
But since Mr. Moreno brought that question up, doesn't that automatically apply to the 25,000, that paragraph right there? No, CH.
Does the limitation in the paragraph above apply to what's below? Not necessarily, because you're talking about a set of circumstances within an emergency declaration. And just as Dr. Carmen was speaking a moment ago, I was thinking of a situation, for example, during COVID, districts were having to put up facilities necessary to deliver food to the families that still depend upon those things. And I can tell you from providing counsel to districts through that it was something that was very much needed to have the latitude to do something like that.
Do you want to go on to CV Local?
Yes, but I'm still a little bit confused. Bear with me. So we're talking about CH Local, and now I'm looking at it, and I'm sorry for jumping to CV. But so where is it that you're exactly referring to, Ms. Lopez?
If
in
you look,
reference?
sorry, if you look on page 1,
One of two?
1 of 2,
Okay.
that second paragraph, the one that's highlighted in blue.
Okay. Okay,
It's the second paragraph on the page,
got it.
not
Thank
the
you.
second paragraph in
All right.
blue.
Got it. Thank you. Want to move on to, did you want to go on to my question? I don't, are you done with CH Local, or?
Well, if y'all want to vote on it like that, that's, whatever the board agrees to.
This is, once again, I'm thinking at, you know, in an event of a catastrophe, an emergency, a hurricane, my opinion, you know, yes, we've gotten pretty good at becoming experts in meeting via Zoom or whatever we need to do, but in a case of that stature, you know, who knows if we're gonna have electricity, who knows if we're going to have any type of method to communicate aside from a cell phone or some other way. And so in an emergency case situation like that, I don't have a problem with the way it's written, but we can vote on it, and it's up to the board. This is a board decision. But I would like to, if I may, I would like to make reference to that CV local as well, if I may, at this point, toward the last page. Actually, it's 1 of 1. And there on the second paragraph, it does make reference to, prior to advertising, the board shall determine the project delivery contract award method to be used for each construction contract valued at or above $50,000. Now, I think with as much as we've gone over CH, I understand the procurement process for goods and services, but Mr. Weller, is the procurement process for construction contracts the same?
No, sir, it's not. Goods and services are going to be procured pursuant to provision in the Education Code. It's Chapter 44031. Those are purchasing limits that apply specifically to public independent school districts. When you get into purchasing for construction projects, public works projects, as they're defined, schools, municipalities, and different types of local government are gonna default to a different set of procurement rules in the government code, in Chapter 2254 of the government code. So it's a different it's a different body of law. If that answers your question.
I guess my second question in reference to CV local is the way that second paragraph is written, and I don't want to reread it again, but referencing that $50,000. And then the third paragraph makes reference to for construction contracts valued at or above, and the $50,000 is scratched off to $25,000. Are we contradicting, or is it a totally separate?
Those are separate issues, I believe, and I can look at this in a little more detail to make sure that there aren't any discrepancies, looking at what you're mentioning here. But the first paragraph, as I'm reading it here right now, relates to a construction delivery vehicle, which is a decision regarding the way that you bid it out. So are you gonna use, you know, a certain type of scoring method, or are you gonna use a different type of scoring method? Sometimes you have to bid, you know, depending on what you choose, you may have to choose the lowest bid that comes in. In other situations, the district doesn't necessarily have to choose the very lowest bid that comes in. You can determine the value of the bidder and the experience levels of the bidder. And so those are two examples of different construction delivery vehicles. So no, I don't think these contradict.
All right, any further questions, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. So at this point, is there a motion to approve Board Policy Update 117?
So moved.
So moved.
Mario Silva and Jamie Lopez. Come on, guys. Nah, come on, yeah. Was it? Okay. I need to see, I think you need to stand up to make the motion from now on. Sorry about that, guys. All righty, so at this point, we have a motion by Orlando Lopez and seconded by
Second.
Janie Lopez, okay, to approve Board Policy Update 117. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. All right, the next consent agenda item was 4.19, request approval of board minutes, and that one was me with a question. And basically, I'm going to address Ms. Peggy, if I may. In looking at the minutes that were provided, I don't think it's a big deal, but just because of record keeping, and I know you do your best at making sure you're meticulous. In looking at the agenda item for that special board meeting on Monday, May 10th, Ms. Peggy, if we go down to hold on. It was presentation of certificates, the oath administered. Okay, so 4.1 was the oath of office. And then it goes down to item 5.1, break for reception. And because of the motion that Ms. Lopez had made, we ended up doing the reorganization of board officers, which is item 6.1 on that agenda, on those minutes. So basically, what I'm trying to say is after the oath of office, we had the reorganization of board and then the reception. Is that a matter that needs to be absolutely correct, or is that just a formality?
She wrote no reception on there.
Right, was it after adjournment?
The reception took place after adjournment, yes, sir.
So I don't think it would be reflected in the minutes of the meeting. Is that right, Mr. Weller?
That's right. If it's after adjournment, it would not be.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the other correction that I would think that it's, and again, it's a minor one, under item 6.1, reorganization of board officers. We have board president nominations, and it says Dr. Ariel Cruz nominates Oscar Medrano, and Oscar Medrano declines the motion. It should read, declines the nomination. Okay, that's basically all I have. Any questions from anyone? Okay, with that said, do I have a motion to approve item 4.19, board minutes?
Motion.
Okay.
Do you want that motion to be with the edit as?
Yes,
as
please,
discussed?
with the edit of, thank you, sir, with the edit of removing the word motion to nomination. And Rudy Corona makes a motion. Do I have a second? Oscar Medrano seconds. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. All righty. So, Mr. Weller, since we did move agenda item 4.15 to an action agenda item, would that be placed as a 5.4 now? Would that be correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, so moving on then to agenda item 5.1, discussion, consideration, and possible action to award bid proposal RFQ 0621-EAF external audit firms. Dr. Carmen.
Mr. Moreno, I believe these packets were delivered out to the board members, and at this point, I think it's up to the board to either discuss and then make a motion to recommend who they would like to use for our external auditor.
I was reviewing the packets, and I would recommend CRI, Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. They have, they're representing good school districts like Harlingen, Brown, Mission, PSJA. I think they would be,
Sherryland.
that would be good for the district.
That's the one with the.
Yeah.
you put it all-
Yeah.
Okay.
What, Mr.
Hey, Dr. Carmen, did anybody evaluate the RFQs? Was there a process? Or they just submitted the RFQs? Was there like a
These
grade?
were sent directly to the board for you to evaluate and then make a
Okay.
decision. But I will go on record, Mr. Medrano, you just said that Harlingen was a good school district, so I'll leave that.
They're competitive, put it that way.
Any further discussion? So at this point, I would need a motion. Mr. Medrano, you made reference to Carr Riggs, and you want to state that in a motion?
Yeah, I move that we hire Carr, Riggs, Ingram to be the auditor, internal auditor.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Oscar Medrano and seconded by Janie Lopez that we accept Carr, Riggs, and Ingram as our external auditor for the year ending, I believe it's 2020, 2021? 2021, 2022, okay? Yeah, I was correct, right? It's 2020, 2021. I'm like, all right, so,
If I may, Mr. Moreno, just for the public to know, we did receive an evaluation sheet. All of us had it in our booklet. So
Yes.
just for the public to know.
that is correct. Thank you for that, Ms. Lopez. And I myself did rate it, and honestly, Carr Riggs was the one that I rated the highest. So again, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Medrano and seconded by Janie Lopez. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to action agenda item 5.2, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve purchases over $25,000. Dr. Carmen?
Yes, sir. Here, I think we have two POs that did not make it in, I think in time for the committee meeting. These are summer school, I believe, both of them. Both are elementary, is that correct? One is with Scholastic Education. I think the buy board contract number is on there. And the second one, Savas, used to be
McGraw-Hill or?
Pearson, used to be Pearson. Both of these are over 25,000. Both are for elementary summer school. If you would like an explanation or questions, we have our elementary director right there, anxious to answer them.
Ladies and gentlemen, any questions? Okay, at this point, I need a motion to approve purchases over $25,000 as stated in agenda item 5.2. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Janie Lopez, seconded by Rudy Corona. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Action agenda item 5.3, discussion, consideration, and possible action of negotiation of Bickerstaff contract hourly rate. Dr. Carmen?
Yes, sir. I believe board member Mr. Lopez asked to put the agenda item on.
Yes, sir, I did. Thank you, Dr. Carmen. Yeah, I had a couple of questions. When we first had the discussion, when he first came on board, I know Mr. Willer said that his fees were negotiable, and it was very vague between his general and specific duties. So at this moment, what I wanted to do is just give Dr. Carmen, the superintendent, the authority to negotiate the hourly rate and to come up with the terms so the board can approve of his services and his hourly rate.
Okay, so is that, are you making a motion?
I'm making yes, sir. I'm making a motion to give Dr. Carmen the authority to negotiate the hourly rate with Mr. Willer and to be specific on the general and specific services that he renders.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Lopez to provide Dr. Carmen the authority to negotiate the contract with Mr. Willard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Silva? Okay, there's been a motion on the floor by Mr. Lopez and a second by Mario Silva to allow Dr. Carmen the opportunity to negotiate the Bickerstaff contract hourly rate. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Or is there any discussion?
Yes,
Sorry,
I do
sorry,
have.
Sorry,
I do have a comment to make. When we're following the board procedures, we're following Robert's rules. And as a board, we had a discussion on this contract. Everybody asked their questions. At that point, they could have made a recommendation to negotiate the price. Nobody made that recommendation. We as a board voted, and according to board operating procedures, it says, once a vote is taken, all board members are expected to support the majority decision. No board member has authority outside of the board meeting, so forth. That's not important. But what I wanted to bring up was, we already made a decision as a board, and we all voted. Everybody here had the opportunity to vote yay or nay, right? Okay, and so then at this point, I'm gonna make a motion to not negotiate and keep it as is.
at this point, Ms. Lopez, with all due respect, I hear you, but we already have a motion on the floor. And so we do need to, is there any other questions or any other comments in reference to the motion that is currently on the floor?
I think what's being negotiated is kind of the things that were vague and that he said were negotiable when we asked him the questions when he was here. There were things like travel fees. He said that was negotiable. There were things like the difference between special hours and general counsel hours. I think that's the negotiation. Yes, you are correct. We did vote on it, and that is correct, but there are some things that are negotiable that are vague in the agreement and things like that.
The contract doesn't have travel fees.
So the contract states that there are no travel fees on page,
Dr. Cruz, I can clear that up. We don't intend charge for travel expenses.
Okay, so the 6 hours that,
Sorry, may I interrupt? I'm sorry, but Mr. Weller, did you have your mic on? I didn't hear what you said, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. I was just clarifying for the record, to the extent that there's a question about what the contract intends, you know, I don't, it's not intended to charge travel expenses.
okay,
So I can clear that up for you right now.
Oh, yeah,
if that's
perfect,
helpful.
because I do have some questions. So the agreement here says out-of-pocket travel expenses shall not be charged to the client.
Correct.
So this means that when you travel from Austin to the Valley for any type of like hearing, deposition, to attend the meetings in person, you're not gonna charge us for gas, mileage, the flights, or accommodations?
That's
Hotel or anything like that?
Pardon me?
Hotel or anything like that?
No, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay. So the hours that you take to travel, so say it takes, if you're on a flight, it takes you, I think now you have to stop in Houston. I don't think there's a direct flight anymore from Austin. You're not gonna charge us those 2 hours?
Well, the time spent is different than the expenses.
Okay, so there is some fees associated with travel?
And if I may, that's a pretty standard.
No, I'm fully aware that that's pretty standard. I just want to make sure that everybody else knows that that's going to be charged to us.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you drive down those 6 hours or 5 hours, however long it takes you, you will charge us those 5 hours to make the trip?
Yes, that's true, but what I do during that time period is work quite hard to make sure to do work while I'm traveling.
I'm fully aware. I know that you do work while you travel, but I'm just, so that we all are aware that things like that are going to cost us money.
Because that's the purpose of this whole transparency situation here, is just to make sure that we give Dr. Carmen the authority to negotiate this hourly rate and exactly what he's gonna do for that, the taxpayer dollars we're gonna be spending on him. So I know there was a motion on the floor.
So for example, things that can be negotiated are like maybe instead of charging us the travel time from Austin to the Valley, he can charge us the travel time from their Hidalgo office to San Benito, which is a lot less.
Right.
That's where we're coming from on this negotiation.
Okay, so once again, ladies and gentlemen, the contract is not the question, and that's not what we're here to negotiate. As far as, the contract has been approved and voted upon
Right.
by the board, okay? And so therefore, again, once again, the motion on the floor is basically allowing Dr. Carmen the opportunity to negotiate the contract and some of the maybe costs that we might incur. And so, once again, are there any further discussions, or the motion is there, it's been seconded, and we can put this to a vote? No further questions? At this point, all those in favor to provide Dr. Carmen the opportunity to negotiate the Bickerstaff contract, please raise your right hand. 2, 3, 4. Okay, and all those opposed, raise your right hand. Okay, the vote is 4-3. The motion carries. All right, moving on to agenda item 5.4, which is coming to us from the consent agenda item, which was agenda item 4.15, request approval of the 2021-2022 compensation plan. And thank you for your patience, Dr. Cruz.
Yes, thank you, Board. Good evening.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Corona. You had the first question, sir?
Yes, sir. My question is, since the legislative session is now over, can we give more than a 2% raise? Like Ms. Lopez had said the last time, or mentioned in May, right? Maybe a 4% to all at-will employees and a 3% contract employees?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Corona. Yes, now that the legislative session has, completed their session, we are at a position now where we can firmly say that we can give a slightly larger increase if you choose.
So that would be, that would be a 4% and a 3%?
We currently have our budget base at a 2% increase. We have 1.5 million to work with. I have Ms. Pettis here to answer any questions about funding amounts. And we, at your discretion, can provide 3% to all of our staff, 3.5% to all staff, or we can provide different amounts to the different employees, professional versus hourly staff, as it was mentioned before
Ms. Cruz,
in
what were
the
the,
last meeting. 3%,
uh-huh,
3.5%. We can consider a 4% for all.
5%?
I think that would be pushing it. Let's be conservative and safe.
If I'm looking at the numbers Mrs. Pettis calculated based on the new summary of finance that's out, or the new model that's out based on the legislative session, 4% would fit under that number, and wouldn't 4% for professional and either 4.5, at least 4.5 for hourly staff, that would fit under that total threshold, right? I don't think 5 quite would. So really the maximum that we would have would be 4% for professional, 4.5% for hourly, if the board wants to put that total amount into compensation. Is that right?
Is that what you're comfortable with? That's what we're asking. What are you comfortable with? That,
In my opinion, we should not go anything more than 1.5%. So 3.5 at the most would be a very conservative amount that we can sustain for the next 2 years.
for contract?
For across the staff, unless you have something else in mind, then we can consider those amounts, and we do have those available so that we can talk about what variation of that you would like.
Ms. Pettis, you just made a very important comment, and the sustaining of our budget. And so we originally stated that, by no means, I have no issue, if we have the money, let's give it to them. I don't have a problem with that. But you made a very important statement that you would hold off or hold it down to 1 or 1.5% above the 2%. So your recommendation as our financial officer would be no more than 3.5%. Is that correct?
An average, sir, yes,
An
no
average?
more than 3% on the professional side, no, definitely no more than 3.5 to 4 on the hourly side, depending on how y'all want to break that up.
so we're going 3.5, 3, you said, right?
We can do however you want to do. What would you like to hear about?
5%? That's what I would like to hear.
I would too personally, but in the best interest of the district, we would need to make sure that we can maintain that 5%, because
But-
come next year, we have to compound that amount with
Can
an
we-
additional amount.
Can we try 4? 4 and 3?
We can do 4 and 3 if you'd like. Let me see.
And if I may, you know, when you compare the percentage increases between a salaried individual and an hourly individual, it makes quite a difference. So, you know, 3% raise across the board for our salaried people and 4% for our hourly seems pretty fair, especially if we can sustain that for the next 2-3 years.
Yes.
We would be comfortable with that, Ms. Vicki?
Yes, sir. I would like to keep it between an additional 1 to 1.5 million overall with the addition of what we have on top of the 2%. If we do anything more than that, it's gonna put us in a really, really risky situation, and I don't want us to be in anything more than we can handle. So if you wanna talk about the various rates, we can do 3% for the professional staff,
Professional.
and that would be 500,000 increase, and a 4% on
For hourly.
hourly staff would be about 390, so that's with just below the $1 million mark,
That's
and that's still a very conservative and
We're comfortable at that point
comfortable.
right there.
Oh, definitely.
So you can
Great.
squeeze that 1% more for the hourly, right?
We'll have Mario turn in his retirement.
4 would be
can.
great. 4 would be
We
great.
can, I just don't want to put us in a
No,
in a
understand-
situation where we
understandable.
can't. We can't sustain.
Understandable.
Yeah, Ms. Vicki, I got a question. I know we've been able to sustain it for the past 3 years, but this whole prior year, it's been extremely difficult. I know we're pretty much consistent the last 3 years, and we're gonna continue moving forward. Can you please explain, the variations, like for professional and non-professional, as far as like contractual and your hourly? The difference between, giving our professionals less money than our hourly? I mean, I understand the whole concept, but can you give us the pros and cons, I guess, for, instead of being consistent across the board at 3.5 for everybody across the board?
So if we do that, do you have something you want to add before I start?
In our opinion, from an HR perspective, it's always best to move the whole plan together. That if we give a 3%, that we move everyone at a 3%, the entire thing slides. When we start you know, sliding some employees and others more so, then that's where compression begins. And so eventually, the pay plans will be skewed. So that's always our hope, that we give a consistent rate across all staff, but it's, you know, to the board's discretion whether we would like to provide different rates.
So Ms. Vicky, just for argument's sake, what do you recommend straight across the board, for example?
If you ask me what my recommendation is
Yes,
straight
ma'am.
across the board, it would be no more than 3.5%.
For everyone?
For everybody, yes. And Dr. Cruz is correct. We start doing a percentage
Right, I
over
know
here and
right.
over there. After, let's say 2 or 3 years, those compensation plans are gonna be completely out of whack, and we're gonna have to look into TASB coming in to straighten those out, and we're gonna have to line up people so that they're within the 10% of the median, and it just becomes a very big task to.
And it's very obvious, since I've been on the board, we're all about raises, but I know when the compensation plan first came about, you know, it was pretty taxing to adjust everyone and make sure that we're, you know, on the right path, and make sure that everybody was getting compensated accordingly.
Yes, and not just that, sir, it's not just the work, because we can do the work, it's that it's costly. We don't ever move down, right? We always move people up. So when we do make adjustments, we're adjusting up.
With that said, Dr. Cruz, if I may, ladies and gentlemen, and also you, Ms. Perez, so I understand about the skew, what's gonna happen if if we do that and give a different percentage for our hourly and a different percentage for our salaried employees. So have either one of you, you from the HR perspective and you from the business side, considered what our budget might look like in reference to giving a dollar amount across the board rather than a percentage? Is that something that's ever been done? Is it doable or is it not doable? And it's just a question.
In the history here that I've seen, you know, as far back as I've looked, there's never been an amount like that. It's always been
Okay.
based on a percentage. It's not to say that it can't be done, but
I appreciate your honesty. That's a question. Thank you.
If I may ask Dr. Cruz, what is the salary pay range for hourly employees?
that varies. If we're looking at the compensation plan that I provided, we have clerical and auxiliary pay grades and administrative pay grades, but our clerical pay grades, they go from pay grade 1 to pay grade 5. For example, pay grade 1, the minimum is $11.17 and maximum is $17.48. Pay grade 5, minimum would be $15.52, maximum $23.79. And so it varies from pay grade to pay grade. And then for auxiliary staff, our first pay grade begins at $9.55 and maxes at $14.86. And we go up to pay grade 9, beginning at $21.84 and $32.09.
So we have hourly staff earning about, the least about $9, $9.90 something, and the most
They're about $32.
about $32.
Well,
And when you
they can earn up to.
Oh,
that.
they
So
can earn
that's
up
the
to.
range. The salaries are placed within that range. So it doesn't mean that we are at max. When, we've used TASB in the past to align our salaries, and I know it's a strange concept, but we mostly max out at close to or slightly above the midpoint. So, but all salaries fall between those ranges.
Okay. And I believe you had said it was about an average of 25,000 that the hourlies were earning.
That's a decent figure.
Okay. All right. And what about our salary employees? What would you say the average salary is?
For a teacher or an administrator? Teacher, we calculate about $50,000 average. That salary ranges from, on this scale, our new hire salary schedule begins at $48,900. At 25 years, it's $64,134. And then our administrators, depending, it's based on daily rate. It could range from $164.58 to the maximum on this scale is $647.
Okay. Thank you. And so, on average, would you say we have half and half in the district? Half salary, half hourly employees?
Probably not.
Okay.
But, so, you know, it just depends on, it doesn't depend. There's more auxiliary staff and clerical.
Okay, all right. And you said it can be an issue having to adjust it in the future. However, it's something that's doable if we were to give a different percentage rate.
The work is doable. The amount, depending on the budget, depending on what revenue the district, you know, is allocated for that year and then the upcoming years, that's going to play a big factor. So, you know, you don't want to stress the budget so much that we can't maintain it, because every year it never goes down, it always goes up. You know, and rightly so, our employees work very hard and are very deserving of anything that we can give and more. But, you know, we have to be able to afford it. We have a responsibility to everyone on our staff to make sure that we're budgeting in a safe and appropriate way so that we can maintain as many positions as needed.
What are some of the consequences that could occur?
If we gave different amounts to different groups.
Would we have to
or-
cut staff?
Yeah, I mean, eventually, if we are maxing our budget, I mean, that's what it boils down to, is having to cut positions. The budget is, you know, 70 to 73% salaries, so, you know, it's all in our employees.
You're
So
saying
it's
maxing
doable,
on,
but we may have to cut staff.
Right, the work, we can do the work, we can do the manual labor in making sure salaries add up, what have you. The budget, you know, the students that we get is what we get, that's what we generate, that's how we generate our funds, so.
but you're saying if you max out on the budget, right?
Well, if we
Meaning-
stress it so much that, you know, we have to sustain it across years. So if we give an increase now, we're not going to decrease it next year, right? We're hoping to increase it or at least maintain. You know, that would be
Right.
shocking for us because we're used to an increase. So we don't want to, you know, tax our system,
Right, and when you're
budget.
saying when we max, you mean like if we give the highest percentage possible, right? Okay, but you're not saying if we give 3% to hourly staff and 2.5% to professional.
Right, we can afford that. As long as we're in alignment, you know, and the numbers add up to 1.5 million or less, preferably less, because we like a little cushion in there, you know, for just things that we don't consider or, you know, changes in our student enrollment.
Okay.
So,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood. So my understanding is as long as we don't max out, meaning giving the highest percentage possible, but we can give a variant of 1% to one group, 1% to another group, a
Yes.
different percentage to another group. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were all clear on that. And also, Ms. Perez, I had sent out an email requesting if we would be okay on expenses and budget. So I think you're answering the question here on the email that I had sent, that if we do give a raise, that we would be financially stable for at least 2 years without having to lay off any employees because of budgetary changes?
Because of budgetary changes, correct. Unfortunately, we can't foresee if there's going to be another outbreak on the pandemic, how our enrollment might, go down. Those are other factors, but as of right now, it is fiscally responsible to stay within those boundaries that we've set. So.
To Ms. Lopez's point, I understand that it would be great if we could help out our hourly employees a little bit more, but because of everything that's happened in the last year, I feel like this next year is gonna be very telling as to what more, if we can have more leeway in the future and stuff like that. Am I correct to say that?
Yes, which is why we're trying to stay as conservative as possible.
Okay.
You're scaring me. You're saying cut staff. Okay.
No, I didn't, we were not cutting staff.
Somebody said cut staff. We don't want to cut staff.
No, that is
We
never our
want to provide a
goal.
raise for everything that would be safe and economical and fiscal responsible.
Fiscally responsible, yes, sir.
Right, I
Right,
do
because
wanna-
she was saying that the max would be maybe like a 4% across the board. And so that would be maxing it, that would be high. So then
Correct.
we would want to choose something below that, is what
Correct.
I'm understanding.
So your recommendation, Ms. Vicky, was 3.5 straight across? That was the most
Yes.
feasible one?
That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Okay. In addition to this, ladies and gentlemen, I've got some other questions in reference, I don't want to cut anybody off, as far as we can go back and make a recommendation as to, I didn't even think that we were going to make a raise recommendation, I just thought we were going to look over the compensation plan, but it's great that we're moving ahead. But, so I guess right now, we're talking about a possibility of a 3.5% raise across the board. Any other debate on that issue before I ask another question on the same agenda item? 3.5 for now, and okay. So my other question that I have, and I don't know if this is a question for Dr. Carmen. I can formulate a lot of the answers in my head already, but in looking at the compensation plan in itself and looking at pay grade, and again, by all means, and I want to say it publicly, I'm not trying to micromanage, but again, we are elected to represent our staff, and our staff is very important to us because without them, we're not going to get anywhere. But in really taking the time to review this compensation plan, I noted that in pay grade level 6, it is page 3. It's very tiny. Y'all see it on pay grade 6, page 3 on the compensation plan. Okay, if you look at pay grade level 6, the majority of our directors, okay, and again, because I work for a school, I'm familiar with the certifications and the degrees that we hold as far as, but I'm looking at the Director of Bilingual Education, the Director of Special Programs, the Director of CTE, the Director of Professional Development, and I'm not naming them by name, but I could, Director of Federal Programs, Director of Maintenance, Director of Transportation, all fall under pay grade 6. And for the most part, they all have the same certifications, and for the most part, I would assume, and I hate to assume, but I would think that for the most part, pretty much the same job, not the same descriptions within their capacities, okay? So my recommendation, but I want to discuss, is my concern is, and by no means am I stating that I would like to see their pay decreased. That's not what I'm saying. But in looking, again, very diligently at this compensation plan, I'm concerned with the Director of Elementary Instructional Implementation and the Director of Secondary Instructional Implementation being at a pay grade 7. So my recommendation would be to place them up in a pay grade 6 without touching their pay. But again, I don't know all the ins and outs, so I'll refer to either you or to Dr. Carmen.
So I don't think Dr. Cruz was here the first year that TASB brought this to the district. Based on the roles and responsibilities and regarding student achievement for elementary and secondary directors, the recommendation was to put them in a pay grade higher, and we followed, the board at that time, followed TASB's recommendation to place them in a pay grade 7, which was above the other directors at a pay grade 6. And it makes sense. I mean, if their evaluation is tied to student accountability, they've got quite a bit of skin in the game. And so they looked at that, and they looked at the responsibility of those two positions. That was the recommendation from TASB, and we abided by their recommendation. So that's why they are in pay grade 7.
Okay, and Dr. Carmen, just to further, I guess, for lack of better words, again, debate the issue with you, I understand all about the student accountability, and yes, we have the elementary sector and we have the secondary sector, but as far as accountability, we look at our Director of Special Programs, special ed specifically. Accountability is all about doing the right thing for these kids as well. The Director of Bilingual, some districts are dinged with their ESL and bilingual population, and again, they're talking about student accountability. So again, you're making reference to a TASB recommendation, and you followed what the previous board opted to do. But aren't we all, as a whole, principals, look at who else is on pay grade 6. We have all our principals, we have elementary principals.
We don't have middle school though. Like, I'm sorry to interrupt
Go
you,
ahead.
but I have
Go
not a lot of education, well, I have a lot of education, but I don't have a lot of educational background in the school systems and stuff. But I'm looking at this and I see the work that our directors of elementary instructional implementation and secondary do, and they kind of oversee, secondary oversees all of the middle school, high school, and VMA, and then they're in the same pay grade as the principal at VMA and the principal of the middle school. And elementary instructional oversees 11 elementary schools as well. So it's kind of, just looking at it from not having worked in education, you kind of see that they do have a lot of responsibility, and they're in the same pay grade as a middle school principal and VMA principal.
Right, and if you follow that line of logic, all principals require the same certification. So would you also recommend to move the VMA principal and the middle school principals down from 7 to 6 also, where the elementary principals are?
No, as a matter of fact, I think Dr. Cruz, Ariel made a great point, and I appreciate that. You know, one of the things that I would look at is perhaps, and again, it's just to banter this, okay? Perhaps the recommendation to possibly move the elementary instructional director into that same grade as is the principal at the elementary, because bottom line, the principals are held accountable. Yes, the director oversees, 11 campuses, but bottom line, if the campuses do not perform, it's not necessarily gonna be the director that gets their job cut. And and I know we don't wanna talk about cutting jobs, but it's not the director herself or himself that's gonna be held accountable for that campus. It's a principal.
I would disagree, and I would think that the director of elementary instructional implementation would also be held accountable for an elementary
They would
school.
both be. They would both be, but anyway, it's just I appreciate the discussion, okay, and it can go either way. I really do. So thank you for clarifying that.
To add to what Mr. Moreno was asking, what are the additional duties that the directors have?
The additional duties above and beyond the principals? Dr. Cruz?
Well, they've been presenting here at our board meetings on, they oversee all of the various tools and resources that we provide to our principals. They are assigned, for doing the research, making sure that the campuses are aligned according to the curriculum that the district is using. So they do have a lot of oversight. I mean, they do have a lot of responsibility. They are, part of the upper level administration that we rely on to make those decisions that are impacting a whole lot of students. So they have a very large, heavy task on them.
Mr. Medrano and I, when we took a tour of the VMA, we actually, Mr. Galvan was in the middle of a secondary meeting with the director and all of the secondary administration. I think that would be pretty interesting to maybe sit in on and see, because those meetings happen weekly?
Every other week.
Okay.
Yeah, so they hold, meetings with the staff. They are a big part of the communication system and the coaching and support system that is provided to the principals. There's Ms. Alvarado, but she assigns a task or the support task to the two directors, and, there's more people to support, and they're very grateful for that, principals are.
And ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate the discussion. That was a healthy discussion, and everybody's opinion is valued, so thank you for that. The other thing that I would like to bring up, and I know I'm beating a dead horse, but once again, I'd like to address the counseling situation. I think, Dr. Carmen, you were gonna speak to that. I don't wanna put any words in your mouth, but my recommendation at this point, and again, it's up for discussion, ladies and gentlemen, and again, despite and contrary to what people say, Mr. Silva came on the board after, his daughter is hired, and I'm not making recommendations for any specific person. We're looking at groups of people. And so with that said, I don't know what you've been able to look into, Dr. Carmen, but at this point in time, aside from any discussion, I would still like to make the recommendation as a board to follow, I'm not gonna say follow to the T, but to follow a comparable district to ours, which is Los Fresnos, in awarding our counseling staff an additional stipend, going with the elementary at $2,000, the middle school $2,500, and high school at $3,000. However, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Carmen, to see what findings you have for us.
Right, so I think Dr. Cruz has those findings. In a nutshell, the only district to pay those largest stipends is Los Fresnos, but they pay their counselors on the teacher pay scale. In San Benito, Harlingen, Brownsville, Sharyland, and Rio Grande City. I'm not sure why that district was brought up, but it was. Dr. Cruz reviewed all of those, and again, I'll let you elaborate, Dr. Cruz, but they're all paid on administrative pay scales, not the teacher pay scale, and they offered no stipend at all to their counselors, other than the head counselor at, I believe, the high school level. Is that right, Dr. Cruz?
Yes, that's correct, sir. And I would like to bring to your attention, Board, that there was an error on the last list that was provided. Under San Benito, the head counselor for VMA in high school, VMA receives $1,300 and the high school receives $2,000.
And that is for head counselors at those respective campuses?
For the head of the department. Mhm.
So do you have any additional information in your findings as to, aside from what Dr. Carmen stated earlier in reference to those stipends across the board for?
Just the fact, just to reiterate what Dr. Carmen said, they're, in other districts are paid on a teacher pay scale, therefore their stipends are higher to compensate for that. We feel that they're being fairly compensated. We wish that we could pay our counselors and every employee way more than what they're making now. But this is a fair pay for this group of employees.
Any further discussion?
I don't know if you have this form that. Yes. Okay, so I'm just looking at it, and on our page 2 of the compensation plan in your packet or online, Harlingen, their counselors are at a 2. Their 191 day for counselor elementary, their median is 65, and our median is actually higher than that. Plus, they get an additional stipend.
Now, can you, I know I saw that sheet that you're referring to, Ariel, and I don't have it in front of me, but speaking to that, Harlingen has how many days worked? Yeah, I believe it's 191, is that correct?
Correct.
And then our counselors are 207, is that correct, Dr. Cruz?
Yes.
So once again, that would, when you divvy that up by their daily rate and stuff, it's pretty comparable, I would say. I mean, it's, they're working, they're getting paid for for the work they're doing. It's not like they're getting more than, I don't think in this situation, our San Benito counselors are making more than the Harlingen counselors. But you see what I'm saying?
They're working extra days, so
Correct.
that's why it seems like they're
Correct, it seems
earning
like they're
more.
making more.
And the other thing also is the whatever they have on their plate. It's like their schedule has a lot of things on their plate that Harlingen doesn't. Harlingen has a GT coordinator. They have a GT testing person. And so here, our counselors have that extra duty. And so is it comparable also according to their duties? Or are our counselors doing a lot more than what other district counselors are doing? And I think it's important, somebody said earlier, they said we gotta focus on San Benito. Well, even if they are comparable to other districts, maybe not on their duties, and so if they're not, if they have more duties here in our district, can we compensate them for that?
I totally agree with you, Mr. President. We need to give them a better stipend, because they're doing the job that we can't do it, yeah.
Okay, and the other thing I'd like to speak to, and Dr. Carmen, I think you'll be a little bit more knowledgeable than I am, but with this last legislative session, and during my lunchtime, I was looking over a MoKZ presentation, and so I believe that it states there, one of the bills that was passed that effective I guess immediately, I believe counselors will now have to be provided 80% of their time ensuring that they're doing just that, counseling, and 20% would be, give them leeway to do other things. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, but I think it's with the start of the next school year. I don't think it's effective immediately. but-
Yes.
Hey, Dr. Carmen, just so we can all be clear here, because there's, there's dialogue going all over as far as the responsibilities of our counselors. Would it be feasible, or would it be timely for us to get an update exactly what they do from the elementary to middle school and high school, their responsibilities, just to make sure they're compensated fairly?
We can. I think it's going to be very similar to area districts. I mean, there'll be some variation based on what the central office staff, the Harlingen has for support, or Brownsville, or Los Fresnos, or other districts. I think it's going to be very similar. But yeah, we certainly can get.
I agree with
close to
Mr.
that, yeah.
Lopez on bringing on some information on them.
I also have a question, because we pay money to the Communities in Schools program. So does that take away from the workload of, from the burden of our counselors at the schools where we have the Communities in Schools?
They do bring resources to our kids that are in need. And if they weren't there, yes, they'd probably go to the counselor for that assistance. But it's not counseling per se. It's more bringing the outside resources in, mental health, those types of things.
It's social work. It's connecting them to outside sources.
Yeah, Dr. Carmen, so, yes, Mr. Moreno, the reason why I bring that up is just so we can get clarity, because there's dialogue going, we have one board member says one thing, and so, just so we can make sure that we have, good representation from the staff as far as exactly what they do and the responsibilities at all levels, and, just so we can make a fair assessment.
I wouldn't have a problem with that as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Lastly, if there's no more discussion on counselors, I have one more item that I would like to bring up, and again, I'm sure there's a logical explanation. But when we talk, I'm looking now at page 17 of the compensation, page 16 and 17. Just for clarification purposes, the new COVID recovery stipend, fresh in my memory, it's a $500 annual stipend given to salaried employees or everyone?
It's to all employees.
All employees.
All employees, and that's paid in December.
Okay, and in addition to the longevity one as well, depending on the years of service, correct?
Right, and we think we'd like to rename that instead of
Yes.
longevity, retention.
We have renamed that to
Okay,
retention.
there you go. That's not a problem
It
with me.
communicates,
Okay, and my final one is on page
Really better.
17. Being that I was formerly a principal at a district where we had a multi-million grant approved for the 21st Century Program, the ACE program, as principal, as a district, we hired a director for the ACE program and some assistant directors and a secretarial staff, but ultimately the principal oversaw that program. Okay, and so one of the things that I'm looking at is during my tenure at that school district, the 7 years I oversaw the ACE program, nowhere in that contract was I compensated for the program, okay? And basically money, my question is at this point, in looking at this, we have a $7,500 stipend being provided to non-grant site campus administrators, when in fact those that are granted the awards do not get offered a stipend whatsoever. So for example, and what I want to share with my colleagues here is if you have that ACE program for 5 years, administrators aren't compensated at all. They just oversee the program, okay? And then the hopes are that at the end of the grant cycle, the school district will be able to sustain the programs that were brought into with that ACE program, with the 21st Century grant. But now we have those that are sustaining the program, and administrators are now being compensated $7,500 annually. So once again, I'm not trying to take money away from anybody, okay? I just, I want to know what the rationale is, because I would think, in all fairness, that some of those monies, and it could be something along the lines of how the grant is written, that perhaps because they're grant funds, we cannot compensate the administrator. And so I just, again, I want equity for all our staff.
Right, so the difference there on our grant sites, the principals do not oversee the after-school program. We have a site coordinator they oversee the administration of the after-school program on those campuses. When we lost one of the grant cycles, and we ended up with a number of campuses who were non-grant funded, we felt like we could not afford to pay a site coordinator out of local funds, and so instead, we put that extra duty onto the campus administration. So again, at grant sites, principals do not oversee after-school program, a site coordinator does. On non-grant sites, administration does oversee it, and that's the reason for that compensation.
That makes perfect sense. And so my last question to that effect is, so that those non-grant sites that award their administrator the $7,500, is that strictly or solely only for the principal? Can that be shared? Is there a guideline to follow as to who gets those additional funds?
It can be shared, so the principal could do part of it. They could give the assistant principal half of it. They can have the assistant principal do all of it. If they have two assistant principals, they could split the duties. Each campus submits a plan, but the total dollar amount is $7,500.
All righty, perfect. Questions?
When does the grant end for the after-school program?
Well, we just reapplied. Ms. Alvarado, when does the cycle end? Is this the last year? This is the last year. Okay. Right.
The end of the summer? Okay, and so you're pending whether you're receiving the new grant?
That's correct.
Okay, so if we were to approve this compensation plan with these numbers for the after-school program, what's Plan B if you don't get that? I mean, I hope you do get it, but what happens if you don't? What's Plan B?
We would back out some of our ESSER 3 that we're supplanting into other 199 expenditures, and instead of putting $7.5 million away, we would take out whatever that number is, so we fund our after-school program. We'd probably have to start tapering it down at some point, but for the immediate school year, we would reduce our supplant number from ESSER 3 and fund our after-school program with those funds.
And would that affect the raise that we're planning on giving?
No, ma'am. Again, we're planning on putting back about, on average, $7.5 million of the ESSER funds back into our fund balance. So essentially, we have $7.5 million to work with. So no, ma'am, it would not impact the raise, but we would very likely not be able to sustain that for a number of years. The ESSER grant runs out after 3, so we would likely start to taper down some of those after-school program services if we don't receive the grant. We feel strongly about our chances of receiving it, but we would be able to maintain through ESSER 3 and simply reduce the amount that we're supplanting into 199, thereby reducing the amount that we put into our fund balance for each of the next 3 years.
And how much would it cost us?
What do we spend out of 21st Century Grant annually, Mrs. Pettis? Do you know that number? Top of your head? Is it a little less than $1 million? Okay, then I'll just wait.
Including the grant and non-grant?
Right, so non-grant, we already have funded. The only thing that's on the table would be whether or not we get the grant, the 21st Century Grant back.
1.7 million for this grant.
For how many years?
This is for what?
1.7?
Current grant cycle, we have 1.7 million.
Okay. So then instead of putting back 7.5 million into fund balance semester 3, we put back about 5.8 next year.
But some of that goes to Lyford, doesn't it?
Well, if we don't have a grant, we'll go to, they're gonna do something else.
But right now it's costing 1.7, and some of that 1.7 goes to Lyford?
It goes to, yes, we have shared service agreement amount.
Yeah, and part of the grant is to have another, that gives you points, so to have a partnership with another district gives you points in the grant, and that's what he was alluding to right now, because we both shared that grant. That gives you points, so you really have to have somebody with you when you apply. It gives you points on the grant, it's a competitive grant. So does some of those money go to Lyford? I would say yes, because it's a total grant.
So it might be less that we would spend, because it's 1.7 total with Lyford and us.
I'll give you the total. That would be
Thank you.
right,
We knew
folks.
you were a walking computer.
Way to go, Vicky, under pressure.
Okay, so here, Dr. Cruz, thank you for standing there for such a long time and answering our questions. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, are there any further questions? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move to approve the 2021-2022 compensation plan with the following amendments, that we include a 3.5% increase across the board for all employees. And just bear with me, guys, and I'm also going to recommend that we amend, and I'm going to recommend, and it's up for a vote, that we go ahead and approve the counselor stipends as stated previously: elementary, $2,000, middle school, $2,500, high school, $3,000. Is there a second?
Before
I
that.
second.
We can, I think I said it before.
Okay.
We can, if we don't approve those stipends right now, when do stipends get paid out?
Throughout the year. We can bring this back at any time to modify it.
So
What-
we can have that,
The presentation.
the presentation and then.
Correct. So once again, and
I'd like to have as much information as possible.
And that's, I don't have an argument with that. So right now, there is a motion on the floor, okay, and it has been seconded. There's a motion by me to approve the agenda, the compensation plan with the amendments. There is a second by Ms. Lopez. So at this point, all those in favor, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. And all those opposed, raise your right hand, same sign. Okay, so the motion carries 4-3. Now, I do wanna state that, for the record, Mr. Lopez, you did, I thank you for your suggestion. It is very important for us to see the differentiation between the duties, and so, hopefully, Dr. Cruz, you can, provide that for us, by going to the different, levels, the different campuses and getting that for us. So thank
Yes,
you for your time.
Yes, Mr. Wynn, I appreciate that, but I guess the reason was just to make sure that it's fair across the board for everyone. Because the last thing we need is, a week from now or 2 weeks from now, all of a sudden, the high school principals, the high school counselors are gonna come and say, well, you know what, this is all the responsibilities we have.
Correct.
So I think we just need to walk on eggshells when it comes just to just giving stipends to give stipends. So, that was my recommendation. So I'm more sure we're gonna revisit this again.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Lopez, and once again, motion carries 4-3. All right, next, we have closed session. So closed meeting in accordance with Texas Government Code, Open Meetings Act, the board may move into closed session for the following reasons. For the purpose of section 551.071, the purpose of a private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subjects or matters authorized by law. Section 551.074, for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear complaints or charges against a public officer or employee. The time is 7:53. We go into executive session. Okay, it's 8:41, and I'd like to call this meeting back to order. For transparency, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to go back to an agenda item, an action agenda item that we discussed earlier prior to moving into executive session, and it was agenda item 5.4. At this point, we're going to separate that agenda item into two separate agenda items. So the first one being approval of approval of the compensation plan with a 3.5% increase for all employees across the board. So at this point, do I have a motion for that to be approved?
So moved. Second.
Oscar Medrano and Mario Silva? We're winging it. Okay, so we have a motion by Oscar Medrano and Mario Silva. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? All right, and the second agenda item would be a 5.5 then? Or is it still 5.4? Mr. Weller?
I think you're still on the agenda item. You're just making a
Okay.
motion on two different items.
All right,
on
so at that
5.4.
point, I guess I will move then to approve the compensation plan with the change in compensation for our counselors, recommending a 2,000 elementary, $2,500 stipend for middle school, and $3,000 stipend for high school. Once again, I move. Was there a second? Seconded by Oscar Medrano. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, all those opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries 4-3. Now moving on to items discussed in executive session. Item 6.1, employment resignations and retirements. Dr. Carmen?
Yes, sir. I recommend to the board that they approve the employment, resignations, and retirements as discussed in executive session.
Do I have a motion?
So move.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Lopez. Do I have a
Second.
second? Second by Janie Lopez to approve employment resignations and retirements as discussed in executive session. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Agenda item 6.2, discussion and consideration to reemploy probationary contract employees to include teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses for the 2021-2022 school year. Dr. Carmen?
Yes, sir. Mr. Moreno, I recommend to the Board of Trustees to reemploy probationary contract employees to include teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses for the 2021-2022 school year as discussed in executive session.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion by Orlando Lopez and a second by Mario Silva to approve item 6.2, consideration to reemploy probationary contract employees to include teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses for the 2021-2022 school year. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Agenda item 6.3, discussion and consideration to renew term contract employees to include teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses for the 2021-2022 school year. Dr. Carmen?
I would recommend to the Board of Trustees to renew the term contract employees to include teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses for the 2021-2022 school year as discussed in executive session.
So move.
Oscar Medrano has made a motion to approve agenda item 6.3. Do I have a second?
Second.
Janie Lopez has second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. 6.4, consideration of withdrawal and/or rescission of resignations of contract employees. Dr. Carmen?
Yes, sir. I would recommend to the Board of Trustees that they approve rescinding the resignation of the contract employee as discussed in executive session.
Okay, do I have a motion? Who was that? Mario? Mario Silva, do I have a second? Okay. We have a motion by Mario Silva and Orlando Lopez seconded to consider the withdrawal and/or rescission of resignations of contract employees. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Whoops. Oh, well. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, Orlando Lopez moves that we adjourn the meeting, and Oscar Medrano seconds. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Meeting is adjourned.